All right, do we got everything right? Looks like everything might be working here. Cool. Stuff might be kind of happening. So I'm just Dead-Eye Ghost Cowboy. Hi. Not familiar with the name. Thanks for coming in. If this is your first time watching the stream, tonight we're just doing some composition. Every Friday night I do actual live performances. But Thursdays I will often, not always, but often get on here and just kind of fiddle around with things and stuff and junk. And tonight I'm working on this album. People who have followed me know that I've spoken many times about how I'm working on my singing. Oh, Emmett, hey, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for coming in. So yeah, people who know my shows know that I'm working on my singing, and I am fairly pleased with where I've gotten to with my vocal capacity. I'm not ready to go public with it yet, but I love singing. It's so much fun. Should get this microphone positioned a little better. And I'm writing this album. It's called The Thief of Time, and it is specifically being written for me to sing on. And hey, Sean, how you doing? Thanks for coming in, bud. So this one, yeah, I don't know if I will ever release it. It really depends on where my vocal capacities kind of lead me to. And, time will tell. So this might be something that never happens. It might be something that happens and no one else ever hears. And it might be something that I actually put out and I'm proud of. So. I will not be singing tonight. Right now, I'm just kind of listening to it. This is my first time composing since redoing my entire operating system, which has been a very, very long process this time. So basically, in this B section, this is where the singing would occur. Of course, the guitars would sound significantly different once I record with a real guitar, but I love the playback capacity of these MIDI notation programs and what we can do with them. It's kind of stunning, really. The second A section would be the first chorus of the song, so to speak. It's first called It's a Long Story. And this one I've got almost all the lyrics written for. I have sung, like I said, I'm not going to sing it here tonight, but I have sung along with this. And the whole album is going to be very kind of light in this vein, very different than most of my albums. And this particular song, I think, is pretty much written. Like I said, I'm just kind of listening through here to feel for it. And hopefully my voice is coming through all right with the music playing. You guys and or gals who might be listening, this is the first time anyone other than me has heard any of this in any capacity. Even Sarah hasn't heard this stuff yet. She's usually up in her office on the top floor while I'm down here composing. A few substitution chords in that little break there. I really like that little section. Kind of a weird thing in this program that the drums get louder so you start playing and the drums just kind of bump up. I've done it with like all kinds of like this, like general MIDI with DST plugins with the inherent drums to the system. Yes, Em, and I am streaming on Twitch and YouTube simultaneously, and that's pretty much what I do these days. I stream both at the same time. I've got some people who just really prefer YouTube and some people who really prefer Twitch. A lot of people say you shouldn't do both. And the basic reason they give is that, you know, people who like Twitch aren't going to go over to YouTube, and people who like YouTube. And I'm like, that's exactly why you should. If I got people who like YouTube, let them watch on YouTube. Got people who like Twitch, let them watch on Twitch. I'm good with that. So yeah, okay, it looks like everything's working well. So that song is pretty much written. Erasure of Time. Oh, cool. Oh, now I recognize your username on Twitch. By the way, Deadeye Ghost Cowboy is a killer username. That is really cool. I'm totally digging that. Erasure of Time. This one, I've got the music written for. I haven't written any lyrics yet, but this one, I came up with this riff, played on the guitar, it sounded a bit better. So I came up with that riff just fiddling around with my guitar, and I'm like, this is totally going on the Thief of Time. And so I put it in here, and right away I knew that this should be a song that just puts people on edge. This should be just filled with anticipation. And so I started out with just that riff, and then I kind of, in this section, I'm just ramping up. I'll do this crescendo in with a second guitar, the bass, and then this line here, the percussion line, is representing a shaker. And it's actually kind of a weird use of a snare drum sample in this case that so that shaker will be doing 16th notes like that, and that'll really help kind of drive that feel. But then what I did, this was a fun one from a compositional perspective, where normally when I do a string section, I will write kind of a string quartet. And so that'll typically be violin, violin two, viola, and cello. So in this case, I started it out and I just wrote the string section with with viola and cello. Very, very simple. Nothing crazy going on there. Really not even very exciting, but it's got this really good feel to it. And I feel like it really, when you put this underneath those guitars, it really gives a nice, solid, anticipatory kind of feel to what you're doing. Totally loving that. And then I'm like, okay, now I want to get people on a more kind of visceral level with what I'm doing here. And this is where it's really useful to kind of understand what frequency ranges do to people. You know, and if you look at iconic guitar riffs, like the riffs from Smoke on the Water, Iron Man, Sweet Child of Mine, Hell's Bells, Highway to Hell, Crazy Train, Ain't Talking About Love, all of these, just these huge iconic, plenty of others, these huge iconic guitar riffs that so many people know. One thing we find is that they all tend to be pretty much between around the second fret or so on a guitar in standard tuning, up to, and Sweet Child of Mine by Slash really goes higher than any other iconic guitar riff, going all the way up to fret 15 on string 1. And that, if he had moved that much higher, I don't think it would have worked, because it starts to move out of this frequency range. And now I suspect, I do not know, but I suspect that this frequency range is kind of dictated by the human voice, and particularly the female voice, because that's what we've evolved, having, typically our primary caregiver is our mother. And most primary, Crazy Train's brilliant. I mean, I'm right there with you. It's one of my favorites as well. That whole album is killer. But this whole frequency range, this is a very soothing area for us. And when we start to move too far out of that frequency range into these extended frequencies, when we get really high pitch noises, it usually, or very low pitch, it is usually some sort of a danger. So a lot of screaming is very high pitched. Screaming is typically danger. Really high speed winds, things like this. There's a very natural inclination that, hey, this is bad for us. We should get away from it. And on the very low pitched end, we get into these sub-bass frequencies, and this is, it's the growl of a predator, it's the growl of an earthquake, it's volcanoes, it's explosions, it's bad things that I like to be very far away from, because I'm extremely selfish about my safety, and you should be as well, whoever you are. And so what I did here is I wanted to play on that concept that the low frequencies are dangerous. And so here, I took this contrabass. So this is the big upright double bass in the orchestra. And I went to, in this case, we're writing in G minor. And so I just went to the lowest G note that I could achieve. And this is going to be one of those things that in the mix, it's almost like you feel it more than you hear it. And I don't even know if this will come through very well over the internet. I don't know what kind of speakers you guys might be listening on, but you kind of feel it when that note comes in. Yeah, totally digging that. And in a place like this, normally I would put a guitar and bass note right on the beat 1 of this measure. And when I did that, it just didn't feel quite right to me. And so I took that back out. I did leave the shaker hitting beat 1, but the second guitar, I just had to cut that completely. And then I take everything else silent. And that's that kind of, like when you're feeling danger, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, wait a minute. Why is everything gone? Where are they hiding? What's going on? So I really like the way this piece went together like that. And do some slight key changes here later on, some changes in feel. And again, this will all be kind of changed around when I put lyrical content in. This pause will probably happen quite a bit later in the song. I'll have a verse or two in place and then go to the breakdown. I shouldn't say a pause, but the breakdown there. So that'll happen a bit later. So basically, I've just got the concepts laid out. And let's see what else we got here. And this album, this is, I will say, largely inspired by the work of Justin Sullivan. And Justin is the singer and possibly guitar player of a band called New Model Army, I believe out of the UK. Very cool stuff. Justin did a solo album called Navigating by the Stars, and I so love that album. It's really good. And I'm not trying to sound like that, but it kind of inspired where I was going with this. Ultimately, as an aspiring vocalist who's possibly getting where I want to be, I would really like to be singing power metal, but that's a very aggressive type of singing. So I want to start out with, some work like this, and I want to work my blues album, all that kind of stuff. Got to do dishes and think about cooking dinner. Yeah. My kitchen is clean. I just had wheat flour pancakes just about 20 minutes before I started. But thanks for coming in, Doc. Always good to see you. And I doubt we're going to need any significant levels of moderation on a little stream like this. So I'm sure we'll be good. But yeah, thanks for coming in. Now, one thing, a lot of times when I'm writing my albums, my more rock-based albums, I'll lay out the whole album in drums. I've talked about this before. And then I will put a bass line and guitars on top of that. And then I will orchestrate, any additional instruments. This one, a lot of this stuff has been, I come up with an idea on the guitar, which is, that's this riff. On this album, there will be singing on every song. And that's, like I said, if I ever actually complete it. Time will tell. I don't know what the words for most of the songs will be yet. I've got a few of the lyrics written out. And then in this one, and this is something, I'm not even sure that the piano's working on this. Oh, it does. So this one, once I get this main riff going, it goes into this very kind of repetitive type of thing where the singing will occur with this pedal tone on the D note. Bring that piano in. And the singing would start right around this A section that's coming up. So I'm definitely looking to hear how this comes out, even if the vocals don't work. Let's see, this little section here, this is just kind of some different ideas that are going to eventually go into songs somewhere. And this one, again, this one I feel like has probably one of the strongest Justin Sullivan Navigating by the Stars feels. And in this case, you're looking at a bass guitar here. Let's see if I highlight it on that line. And this, I'm actually the upper notes here. Ooh, whoa, slow down, little Randy. I don't know where I'm at now. Totally lost everything. Where are we going here, kids? Let's find that again. So these upper whole notes would actually be the bass line, and this will be a kind of a bass synth type of a sound. I want this real kind of staccato synth. I'm gonna have to do some auditioning of synthesizer sounds to get this to where I want it. Got this fade in. I haven't really touched this stuff for a while, so I'm just kind of going through here, looking at what we've got going on, and seeing if there's anywhere I want to start making adjustments. And then the very last track will be the title track called "The Thief of Time," an F sharp minor. This one, another one I just came with on the guitar. And this is a concept I really like about the guitar, that you can play the same note in different places and it has a different feel. Hey, thanks, Doc. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm really liking where this music is going. It's going to be I think it's going to be a very fun album. And I hope that I can get my vocals to work the way I want them to, because I think this would be a very pleasant album to listen to. But what I'm doing in this case is playing with this idea that you can play the same note in different places. So when you see this here, where we have frets 1 and 2, those are actually the same exact notes as frets 6 and 6 on this other set of strings. And then I'm actually, now this is a modification I should make right away. Those are actually being played on the open string. And so the feel of the note, so that the 4 and the 0 here are the same as the 4 and the 4 here. And now these will all sound the same when they're played in a MIDI notation program like this, but on the guitar, when I play, it's a slightly different sound than when I use fret 4 string 3 rather than string 2 open. And so I'm really playing with that to get the feel to, I'm just playing with this idea. And so basically, the lower note here, the 2, oops, for some reason that's not highlighting. Oh, there we go. So those fret 2, everything above it is identical to what's happening here. I'm just changing that low note, but I'm changing the place on the guitar that I play those notes. And I love the way this is coming out. And then I go to this is kind of a fun little multi-voice strumming thing where I'm going to do, this is a rasgueado, is a Spanish technique where you rake your fingers. Most of this is going to be played with fingerstyle on an electric guitar. Some of it's going to use a pick. But here I do this rasgueado, which I love the feel of. And that's kind of the stereotypical Spanish guitar. That's kind of what we think of as that rasgueado style. And so I'm just going to do a rake across, and then I'm going to have the lower part of the chord I'm just going to strum with my thumb. I'm using some substitution chords in there. I'm kind of playing with an interesting method. So this would be an F sharp minor, but some of my substitution chords, I'm kind of imagining my substitution chords as if I were playing an A major, which is a relative mode. So F sharp minor and A major have the exact same notes. You're just starting from a different position. So I'm kind of using the substitution chords as if it were an altered mediant or submediant from the A major. And when I thought of it that way, it gave me these ideas, like to go to that F major chord. And so it kind of led me to these chords in a slightly different way than I would have likely thought of them, particularly with the F major and the B flat minor chords. So, and that's, I talk to my students who are into composition, and we always look at, what is another way of looking at what you are doing? And it often leads people to some very cool ideas. It's like, I hadn't considered it with that, kind of thought process before. And if I do consider it that way, then, what if I did this? And sometimes, you just come up with some really, really cool ideas. I do want to get these so this looks right for the open strings. And I just want to kick those. I'm just going to paste this in all the appropriate spots. And we've got some more of this over here. So I'm not really so much composing as just kind of like fiddling with looking at the ideas I've already composed and seeing if that leads me to anything. So, yeah, good stuff. And so let's see. And it's so moist. It is so freaking moist. And I want to see, so song, let's see, I've written all of song 1. I just need to finish writing the words. So how many have I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It looks like I got stuff written in for 8 songs. Then I think that on songs 2 and 9, I'm probably going to be mostly just kind of strumming acoustic guitar style. And I haven't decided at all where I want to go with those yet. And I don't really think that... I think with Erasure of Time, I think I'm going to need words written before I can do much more with that. Walking Countless Miles, I think, is kind of in the same boat. I'm going to need to start putting words in. And one of the things I'm doing with this, there's been an interesting developmental process in how I've written music over the many years that I've been writing music. So when I wrote my first album, the earliest riff from that album I would have written in 1990. Back when I was in the military, I was in California. Dude, that's the way to do it. I had 5 pieces of bacon for lunch today and scrambled eggs. It was beautiful. Love bacon. Oh, bacon is so awesome. But when I composed that album, it was a real hodgepodge of ideas. I'd be sitting playing guitar, I'd come up with some idea, and I would write it out in tablature. And then, 2 weeks later, 2 years later, 2 months later, 6 months later, whatever, I'd come up with some other idea and be like, oh, I can jam these together. And so really what you're hearing on Confusion is just this kind of conglomerative set of riffs, which is why it made it really hard for people like Doc to drum to. Hey, Emmett, go to bed, sleep well, and I will see you soon, bud. Hopefully you can make it part of the show tomorrow night. Tell your family I said hi. So yeah, you're just kind of hearing this conglomeration of musical ideas all jammed together. And it led me to a very progressive style of composition where I never wanted to recycle ideas. And then I wrote most of an album that has never been released because it would require a significant amount of singing. And that album is called The Death Sonnets. I've released some demos off of it. And on that one, I was like, okay, this is going to need repetition. And it was a really interesting kind of struggle for me to say, okay, I'm going to copy paste this section, boom, so I can put another verse there. And now I'm kind of taking that. I reverse seared my New York strip. Just hey, right off the cut. That's bachelor stuff there. Even though you're a married guy. Just eat it right off the stove, baby. Absolutely. So I'm kind of taking that repetitive idea further, because with this type of album, it's a place where you can have something like this, where you just have this same note playing over and over, and you just have these very slight little variations from it, and it works really well because of the other things that are going on. And so it's an interesting kind of bit of work for me to go so far away from what my original ideas of composition were. And hopefully that indicates some sort of musical intellectual growth or something. I don't know, it's probably some Tony Robbins crap. So this song that's untitled, I don't So this I wouldn't mind coming up with some more ideas for, because I feel like this is going to need at least one more idea in here, some sort of a break. I don't know. I feel like this might be a little too much to have just what's going on. It's going to need a little something else. You know, and sometimes, so that might just be like taking your idea and, you know, just like slowing it down. So you might have this like, you know, where, am I playing that right? Like that actually, I kind of like that, but I feel, so basically I've got in this, I've got 4 chords. So I've got this kind of C minor, add 9, and then I go down to, oh God, what would this would be kind of a G minor, yeah, because that would be a first inversion G minor, and then I go up to this, this would be more of an F minor, kind of an F minor. What would the yeah. So I'd be like an F minor add 9, and then I go to this E major. So it's like I'd have to work out what that chord actually is. Bacon on bacon is always a fine idea for toppings, but I've only got those 4 chords. So I feel like I should do the slow down idea on this, but I should come up with a different chord. So this is a great place to start playing with this. And now in this case, when I go to that E major-ish chord, I'm actually a touch out of key, because there would be an E flat in G minor, not an E. So, and that's, you know, some those substitution chords can really do a lot to add to the feel. Like I won't play these chords just because of the craziness with DMCA, but in the song Rocket Man by Elton John, it's in G minor, same key that we're in here, and he puts in a C major chord, which is out of key, and then in other places he uses the C minor, and so that 4 chord, the 4th chord in the scale, should be a C major. He plays it as should be a C minor. He plays it as a C major. And it's like, oh, that just does so much for that song. That one little thing being just a little out in that way. I think that we may have had a little drop there. Hopefully everything is still running well. I still don't know what's happening with my bit rate, but I'm fairly convinced that it is not in my computer that that's happening. So, so what do we got here? So I need to figure out some more chords here for G minor and C. So we basically use a C, a B flat, a C and a G. And then we've used our F. And then this it almost feels like if I reinterpreted this as an F flat, which would be really funky, it might actually make more sense. But no. It should be an E natural, not an F flat, because this would be the sharp 6. I love a sharp 6 in a minor scale, or really a natural 6 and a not flatted 6, which is inherent to them. It depends on how you want to look at it. I'm sharpening the 6 from where it is in the scale. In music theory, there is always more than one way to look at what you are doing, with very, very few exceptions. Enough that you can pretty much say there's always more than one way to look at it. But there, I think maybe, so we would have a D minor. And one thing I've done in this is pretty much all throughout this, the 3rd string, the G note, is just an open string that occurs everywhere. So I may want to kind of keep that. So we've got the G. So what if I went to a... let's just go. So we got the G minor, and then we would have an A diminished chord. technically a half diminished. We would have a B flat major chord. We would have a C minor, which I've used. I might do something with this B flat minor, B flat major. That's actually. When I put in that open E string on that, which would be the 5, so there again, I don't dig it that way. Because that would kind of call out to that other E chord. Some interesting ideas here. So okay, let's get this. We get the C minor. We would have a D minor. We would have an E flat major, which I've used as well. I've used the E. I haven't used the E flat. So that could be a cool place to go, particularly if I went from the F to the E flat. That'd be somewhat jazzy in nature, kind of fiddling with that. But so I gotta get myself into a G minor framework here. That B flat up on top is kind of nice. That's a repetition of the 3. There, if I open that up to the G note, oh no, I like the 3 in the 3 position. That, and it's kind of nice in the 10 position also. What if I went back to now there, kind of using this C major shape. Sometimes I'll want to do a chord and it's like, okay, yeah, fingers don't really work that way, Randy. So that's the chord I had in mind, but that's awfully tough to play on a guitar. So that's where you start asking yourself, is there a better way that actually, in that case, if I didn't have the E note, if I went to the that's kind of cool. And so so in this case, we're really, I'm thinking of it as a D, but it's really more of kind of a G minor 7. Yeah, it's really more of like a second inversion G minor 7 that we've got going on here. So I think I'm liking the E flat major. And then, so the G would be the 3 in this case. It's just a, so yeah, it's just an E flat major. I like that particular voicing. I think that's gonna work. So the 7th chord in this would be a F major. And now the F major chord, I thought I was using, oh yeah, so the F major, when I get to this F major-ish kind of section here, I'm basically playing that. Yeah, I don't feel like this is actually an E flat major chord. It's really more of, it's kind of like an F major 7, I think is what's really going on there. And I'm just putting the 7 in the bass, so you're kind of in a third. So it would be an F major 7 in third inversion. That would be the right way to think about that. That's much better. And that's definitely what I'm doing here on the rhythm guitar, is I'm playing that open string. So that third inversion in this case is going to be a little abrasive, but that's what I'm going for. And when a drummer says it's a G minor 7, particularly a drummer who doesn't study a ton of music theory, which I'm fairly sure Doc has not, that it's got to be right. It's just got to be. When Doc says it's true, he's a moderator. He's got the sword, baby. So yeah, kids. Yeah. So really, I'm going from an F major to an F major there. So basically, an F major to an F major 7 third inversion, and that F major 7 would actually be an F dominant 7 if I were in key. And so that's that abrasive kind of nature there. And now here again, I'm kind of playing with frequency ranges, because when we have this kind of this E and C here, the E's in this lower range is kind of going to try to take over as the root, but the rest of the music isn't letting it, basically. And so there's so much kind of F information there that's not going to let that E take over as the root. So that's where you get that kind of abrasive feel, again, which is exactly what I was going for. So okay, so then, but I could still, in this case, I could play with something with that whole F major thing. We'd have because it would be the 6 and the 7 of minor, which would both be major chords. That's a nice sounding chord there, but really that's tough on the hands. So I don't want to use that same high note that I used in the last chord. Because then the what we think of as the kind of soprano line doesn't have a reasonable movement for the kind of thing I'm going for here. And when I do this, just the same chord shape, this becomes an F major add 9 with the G note on the open string, but yeah, it's not. Now if I was to go there, take it up to the F chord with this high D note, so we'd basically have kind of an F major add 6. Bacon, vodka, and lime juice. I'm more of a gin guy myself, but that sounds awfully nice. Okay, and this is being made a little bit on the funky side because I've got this B note that I'm putting in here instead of a B flat. And so this is when I'm doing this, it's like, I love the way that sounds. So I would inherently have a B flat note in my scale. And this is where it's like, okay, that sounds really good. So what I always ask myself is, do I want to put this back in key, or do I want to maintain that? In this case, what we would have is a sharp 3. So we're kind of given, so the 3 of the scale is the B flat. The 3 determines whether something is major or minor. So we're kind of giving a little bit of a feel of a G major concept, even though I'm in a G minor key. I think I'm kind of liking that. Going from the F major, sorry, the E flat major, up to the F major 6, and then that B, F. So this would be kind of like okay, so basically we'd have kind of a, what we get? So we basically have kind of an F major 7 sharp 11 chord. I'm digging it. I want to use those. Okay, yeah, I like that. I hope this ends up fitting. So sometimes you get a concept going, you're like, oh, this is so great, and you put it into context, and you're like, that totally sucks. And I've done that quite a few times. So let's see. This I doubt I'm ever going to use. Let's just eliminate that. But let's start putting this in place. Okay, so we're gonna have, I'm just gonna throw this somewhere up ahead here. So we're gonna go, why? Oh, that's because no. Oh, that's not going to work because that should still be a. Oh, because I'm using, okay. So yeah, this is another cool thing on guitar is we will have this kind of thing where this note on string 4 fret 5 is a G note, and this note on string 3 open is also a G note. But that, it's like on a piano, that particular G note, that octave of G, you can only play in one place. But on a guitar, you can actually play what's known as a unison. And that it has a different feel than if I just play that note in one position. So, yeah, so that's kind of cool. And then this is always kind of an interesting thing. So I want to kind of work out rhythmically. So I'm thinking that this, let's see, I want to go. So I'm actually going to do this way, just because it's slight. And then I'm going to make this whole cross that way. This will go, here I'm just going to give this a strum. Oh, wait, no, let me put that back here. So on the end of 3, end of 3, then we're going to have up a third, a unison. got something slightly wrong here. 1 and 2 and 3 and... Okay, so this should be on beat 4. Okay. I'm going to hit the root here, and then I will not play the root here. Okay, so then we'll go to, so this is up a 7. Yep. And then up a 5 from there. And that will be a quarter note. And now I just got to adjust my strings. That's what it should look like. And then I'm going to hold this chord across. And this is something I do in a lot of my music. I like kind of hitting this on here and holding it through the next measure. Ooh, pardon me. And then let's, and then I often put these in parentheses. In tablature, which is what we're looking at here, it doesn't show these tie lines, so it can kind of look like you need to re-strum that. And so I put those in parentheses to make sure I know that that's a held note. So, and then we moved, now when I move up to that F, that what was that, an F major 6 sharp 11. How that could work. I don't know if I want to go right to, yeah, I think I want that B note to be kind of buried a little more in the sound of the chord, where it's, when it's the second note, it's very, very present. So I kind of want that to be a little more subtle. So I want there, yeah. That I think is where I'm going to go. Okay, so what do we got here? Let's just get some notes over here. So this can be kind of like, something's wrong. F. Okay, so that, that should be a 2. There's a 3. Okay, and then back to the root. And then we'll go to the B. Whoa, wrong spot. The B natural. Go to another G note, and then a, and then we'll give it a strum. And we'll have 3, 2, a 2, and then we'll need a, this is a funky chord. If I'm getting it right. I feel like I've got that right. And then that very high D note. And that Let me see if I got that right. Classical Ted. For the A natural? I think I'm using a B natural. Oh, I am totally going for you. You are so right. How did my brain hole do that? Nice. Yes, you are completely correct. Those A's should be natural. And so now let's get this into guitar shape here. And that one should be natural. Get rid of the unnecessary naturals. Yeah, I got this chord getting funky all over the place. I love it. Thanks. Ted, he knows his music. And if anyone has not done so, definitely go check out Classical Ted's work. He's got a channel. I think he does a bit of video game playing, but also a lot of composition. And a more stark contrast of musical styles you would be very challenged to find, but very cool. Oh, that is super cool, Ted. And you know, that's something I've spoken with some of my students about, the fact that when we talk about when we talk about music theory, we have this idea that we're talking about the masters, and the masters are basically a handful of dead German guys. It's like and studying the music of, you know, Bach and Beethoven and Chopin and yada yada, you know, Franz Liszt and Haydn and those. That's great, but there is so much more music, and I've only studied the music theory of Indian classical music a little bit, but it is fascinating, and there are so many great ideas and so many great musicians from the Indian music realm. That's like, when I hear Indian women singing, I just feel like a child being sung to sleep. It's just so stunningly beautiful. So it's really cool that you're getting into that stuff. And as I've said before, and Doc always tries to argue with this, Doc is a hell of a drummer. I know, because I've worked with him in a studio setting, and he is really good. Okay, so yeah, I'm kind of liking where this has gone here. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to use this yet, but I think I'm going to. Yeah, that sounds nice. And so yeah, I don't know where it's going to go yet, but it's going to happen that way. This is something I am definitely liking. And I got to say too, big props to Classical Ted, that I am often accused of having a great musical ear, and I don't. And this is something I actually did not hear, that was an A natural. I did not hear that. Oh, yeah, by all means, Ted, yes, please put a link up to what you're doing. Absolutely. Thank you for asking. That's very cool. But yeah, please do. I love promoting people like Ted. Yeah, so please do. I've had a few people put links up. My friend Susan is also a composer. She does a lot of choral music. And so yeah, I will definitely check that out when I get a chance. Very cool. Yeah. All right. We did actually. Doc is my moderator, and we had. I think it was last Friday. It might have been 2 weeks ago. No, it must have been 2 weeks ago. Doc was unavailable last Friday. There was someone came on. It was like something like, you could buy followers. Yada yada yada. And Doc had banned that before I even got a chance to talk about it, and I was just like, yeah, that's why we get along so well. So it's good stuff. Very good stuff. But yeah, no, that people like Ted, my cool people, those people, I love seeing their links go up and them getting some recognition. So good. All right. So I'm not really getting a lot written here, but I'm getting some very cool stuff written. And Deb, I would say that I really like doing these composition streams, but that's more because I like the stream. If I really wanted to get composition done, it's like that's where I'm like, shut everything off and just go. And when I was doing an album a week, which I did for 11 months, and I did 49 albums in that 11-month period, it was absolutely, it was wild. Doing that much music that fast. You don't have time to think about stuff the way I do here. And this kind of information, and I'd be curious about classical Ted, if you have the same kind of thing, like when you're not streaming, do you like process stuff the same way that you talk about it when you're streaming? Because I do. I think about things like this, but I can process it much, much faster if I don't have to verbalize it. Oh, totally. It's a totally lock me away type of process. I agree completely with that statement that I just highlighted as if you guys could see my highlighting. 3 + 2. Oh, that sounds awesome. I love working in sevens. There's a song I've written just a little bit of. It's called 3 Days of Darkness, and it's how did that. It's something like, but I'm working with kind of going back and forth to sevens in places. I love the way sevens feel, and like the song "Money" by Pink Floyd. Some people say it's 7/8, some people say it's 7/4, and it's like, the point is it's in sevens. Yeah, that's awesome. So I totally agree with classical Ted. I have a lot of respect for drummers. So I'm going to tell a story about Doc. We met working at, I want this company to be able to maintain their anonymity. So it's a company in Western Washington State that produces large cargo and passenger jet aircraft. One of those companies just north of Seattle that does that. Who could they? Nobody knows. Anyway, we met building airplanes, and I once asked Doc at work, I said, man, what is the difference between a drummer and a percussionist? I loved his answer. He said, a drummer plays the drums. A percussionist can hit anything and make it sound good. And I'm like, that is a great definition there. So then Doc, I don't remember how long it was after that, probably some period of weeks, when he went and just absolutely proved that he is a percussionist and not a drummer. And we had some of the things we had to drill on those aircraft were like crazy. We'd have to drill these crazy holes. So we had these long drill bits, some of them were like, 12, 13 inches long. And so Doc grabs a couple of drill bits, right? And he's like, there's this massive structure that we build these airplane wings in. 'Cause these are wings that you can stand up in and have a lot of room. Huge airplanes. And so he grabs these things, and he's like, starts tapping some stuff, on these structures, you know, he's, oh, that's, da, da, da. And all of pretty soon there's like 12 people standing around just watching Doc, just completely going for it. And it sounded incredible. It was, I wish we'd had our stupid little smarty phones at the time, because people would have been videoing that and putting it up. It was just so amazing. So, yeah. The name of the company does rhyme with the sound of a spring. That's true. That's true. Another funny story. When I told my daughter, she was quite little at the time. She's almost 30 now, because little shithead won't stop growing. But she would be very upset with me, because when I went to work, she thought I was going bowling, and she wanted to go bowling with me. Fun times. Oh, you're welcome, Doc. No, it was so cool, and I love bragging about stuff like that. You know, when I was like, you just see that, and you're like, man, that's there's talent there. There's a lot of talent in that. So it's good stuff. Very good stuff. So yeah, this you know, I haven't written a ton here, but this is good. Yeah, I'm going to use that somewhere in the song, or something very close to it. You know, there's always that, you know, the potential for making a modification once you get into context. Context can really do a lot for what's going to happen in your song. It's like, once I put a synth next to this, if there's a synth in this song, yeah, there's definitely going to be a synth in this song, because that lower line in my bass staff is meant as a synth, which I don't know exactly how I'm going to put that in play yet. The synths in Sibelius will not produce a sound like what I want, so I'm doing it as an extra bass. So yeah, you know, once I put a synth with this, or I put some percussion with it, or, you know, a second guitar, or the bass line, or whatever, it might happen that way. Yeah. Oh. That was a fun. There are so many stories we could tell about that anonymous aircraft manufacturing company and our journey there. But I want them to be able to maintain their anonymity. I'd hate to call them out. God, that company sucks balls. I don't usually talk like that in my stream. I should watch myself. I know at least a little while ago there was at least one 10-year-old in my stream. So, yes. Speaking of which, I've recently filmed. I haven't edited it yet. I haven't even got my video editing software back in my computer since I reinstalled my operating system. But I made a video. A few people on my Discord asked about my pizzas, and I put up some pizza recipes. And particularly Therese has been asking about how I make my deep dish pizzas. So I made a video kind of tutorial about how I make my deep dish pizza. And my favorite line in it is, I did the whole thing, you know, by hand. You know, I'm doing the dough. I'm, you know, hand kneading the dough and the rising and everything. And there's a part when you're hand kneading doughs that you do the kneading and then the rising and then you punch it down. And I love this. I said, and now you need to punch this dough, because you got a big ball of dough. I said, you just punch this dough right in the ball. I really thought I was pretty witty on that one. So, see, this is when we're, and I'm sure Ted will back me up on this, when we're composing alone, this is not what's going through our heads. We're not thinking of companies we worked for over 20 years ago. But this is what makes the streaming aspect so fun, is this kind of community building up aspect of it. And I know Ted does this too. And again, go watch Ted streams. He's a very fun streamer. You know, I think I was one of your earlier viewers. I remember coming across you. I was just kind of glancing through some of the streams with lower viewer counts, as you know, because that's where I'm at. And I saw this sheet music. Oh, that looks like he's using Dorico, which is another a notation program. And so I went in and kind of asked him about it. and of course threw him a follow because he was doing cool stuff. And so yeah, please go check out Classical Ted and all of that. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and I keep highlighting these things like you guys are gonna be able to see what I'm highlighting on my screen that's not showing on stream. That's because I am an airhead. I'm certainly not a hairhead. I took care of that about 12, 13 years ago. God, when did I shave my head? It must have been, well, I'm 59. Yeah, I think I was 37. So about 13 years ago. Because I'm getting old. My freaking daughter's going to turn 30. Madness. Okay, let's compose some music. Let's compose some music here. You know, being a teacher and a master's student, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work. Yeah, well, hey, you know, the internet will still be here when you're ready for people to watch it, Ted. Yeah, I remember that. That was a fun night. And God, there was Jerry played on 2 songs on my first album. He played on Mental Floss and The Edge. And then I had another drummer, Braden McGraw. Both of these guys just excellent to work with. Braden wasn't quite as reliable as Jerry. Jerry is a very reliable musician, which, as musicians know, that's a freaking rarity. But when I was first presenting the idea to Jerry of, you know, hey, I want someone to do some drumming, I had just taken, this was back in the mid 90s, and I just take a little tape recorder and just kind of recorded some stuff. I'm like, this is the kind of stuff that you'd be playing to. And on the beginning of that tape, there was this little warm up where I just did this kind of Spanish guitar thing, fiddled around, and our buddy Chris was also there. And Chris, for ages, he's like, you got to put that Spanish guitar thing in the album. You got to put the Spanish guitar thing in the album. And the album took so long. I was 6 years in the studio on that, 14 years from the first riff I wrote to actually releasing the album, 1990 to 2004, that I actually went and I learned some Spanish guitar just to put that in there. And so you'll hear that little Spanish guitar thing and kind of an expanded version of it on the song The Blood of the Guitar off of my first album. Oh yeah, Jerry is Doc. Yeah, I'm using multiple names here. and that was interesting too, because that it's so cool looking back at like the little things that have shaped this. It's like I probably would not have started playing classical guitar had it not been for that part, which I would not have done if I hadn't had all this extra time in the studio because of scheduling needs between myself and Dave, who engineered it up at Riverside Studios in Granite Falls, Washington. And because of Chris wanting that on there. And yeah, so it's just, the whole thing is just so crazy how we develop musically, you know. And I'm sure if we were here, Classical Ted's musical story or Doc's musical story, we just have these completely different things. And that's why you see us doing this wildly different bit of stuff. And I'm kind of, so anyway, back to what could end up being some sort of music. Why? Oh, there we go. That's the button I want. So I'm kind of thinking that I could do something like this. Oh, and you know what? This should also be. I feel like I've got something wrong here. Oh, this should be a foot. Okay, so this should be an E flat. I put that on an F. Oops. And this should be on a B flat. Okay. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, that journey is totally still going. Oh, nice. Love the Mozart thing. I had an interesting, my introduction I've always liked classical music, but I had this when I was in junior high. I had come home and I was the only person at home, and I just started looking through our records. And my grandfather had given us a set of classical records, and I just started playing them. And I was just listening to this classical music. And one of the things that really tripped me up was I put on an album that I thought was by someone named Wagner. Turns out his name was Wagner. My dad corrected me on that to make sure I didn't embarrass myself. And I'm like, I know this music. And it was just killer. And I'm like, it's just so powerful. And so I'm listening to this, and I just fell in love with this music of Wagner. Which, when I was, 10 years old, I didn't know. And so my dad gets home, and I'm like, dude, where do I know this Wagner guy from? Where have I heard this music? He's like, oh, it's in Excalibur, the movie. And I'm like, oh, yes. And I just, that day I listened to just these records for like a couple of hours. And I'm like, this is just such great material. And it really, at the time, I really wasn't even a musician. I grew up in a household where listening to music was strongly encouraged, and there were a lot of different types of music to listen to. We had the classical records. My mother was really into Barry Manilow, ABBA, and the Carpenters, and I still love that stuff. Huge Barry Manilow fan, huge ABBA fan. That stuff. Brilliant songwriting on that. And then my dad was more of the Elvis and Beatles, Bachman Turner Overdrive, and so we had that kind of classic rock stuff. We had the more pop based stuff. We listened to a lot of Bee Gees, but they were strongly encouraging. And then where I really my brain really flipped to metalhead status when I was 12, and my older brother, it's just the two of us. Just the two of us. Now I'm probably going to get DMCA'd for that. He and his buddy Chris came home from school, and they had Iron Maiden's The Number of the Beast on vinyl. And they put this in, and we're all there. My dad's there, and Chris and Ron and myself, and we're listening to Number of the Beast, and then we're looking at the album cover, and the album art on Iron Maiden's work was just so cool. There's all these little hidden symbols and stuff, and that Iron Maiden Number of the Beast album cover is just, when you really start looking at it, you just all the people melting in hell and stuff, and it's brilliant, and that just really twisted me up to the power of where music had gone to. Actually, I don't remember them using the Carmina Burana in that. That's interesting. This was when I was, 12 years old or whatever, 11 years old. So I might be remembering that wrong, but I thought it was Wagner. I am absolutely willing to be inaccurate on my memory from 40-ish years ago. It's also possible to use. I haven't seen that movie in a long time. I may have to watch it again. It's also possible that I was listening to Orff and I'm remembering it as Wagner. Human beings do have imperfect brain holes. So, there was a bear, Doc. And also, it's worth noting that the octopus said, "Yada-da-da-da-da." So there's that. So anyway, I'm kind of thinking on this that I want to kind of I'm thinking I kind of want to get a little bit of some just like gentle strums of some chords mixed in with this light arpeggiation that we've got going here. And so I feel like a third chord is kind of in order in this case. Definitely not that. Wagner, Orff, and original music by Trevor Jones. Okay, well there we go. So both. That's cool. I may have to pull that movie up again and it's a great movie. Man, that was well done. I remember we went to see that movie in the theater, and my parents have got two young boys, and they're like, why is the music rated R? They were always very liberal about what we watched a lot of Cheech and Chong when we were growing up, and my parents were very liberal about that stuff, and so they asked the attendant at the theater, what is it rated R for? Is it for gore? Is it for language? Oh, mostly for language. And my parents say, oh, okay, let's give it a shot. And we get there, like, there's no cussing in the thing. There's like all this bloodshed, limbs being cut off and stabbed, but there's no cussing at all. It's like that guy was completely out to lunch. Anyway, let's find a chord here. So I want to kind of just like intermix what we get, this light arpeggiation, and then a few measures of some gentle strumming, and then kind of have probably a repetition of that. So that's about not the blues. This is definitely not a bluesy song. I should not put that into this song here. Okay, let's find a chord here. So we got this kind of F major craziness thing. And if we're going to go up to the G major, G minor. Just kind of getting a sense of positions here. I'm a very mechanical. I visualize chords very mechanically, and a lot of people, they kind of had their musical coming of age on pianos. We never had a keyboard in the house. My parents are not musicians at all. And so I visualize everything on the guitar. So I just look at these patterns on the guitar and I start pulling things out from there. Don't want that E note in there. Now that's kind of a cool sounding chord. And so, the way I do this is I'll be like, I just see this series of notes and then I'll figure out what the actual chord is. So we got a lot of G notes. We're tripled up on the G note. We got so this is just a G, B flat, D. That's just a triad. And and sometimes you want like a really funky, F major 7 add sharp 11, F major 7 sharp 11 chord, and sometimes you just want a G minor chord. And that's an interesting voicing of that chord. I do like to experiment with, should I put some... Well, if I do that, I would just be putting the B flat back in there. What if I threw in... No, not looking for that. I like the D note up on top. I don't like the B natural in there. I think I'm gonna put that in there for now. I don't think there will be any slide guitar on this album, Doc. There will be definitely slide guitar on my blues album. There's a song I have written lyrics for called Just a Guitar. And this was actually inspired by a guy named Tony. I need to try to look him up so I can say, hey, you inspired this song. It's a little bit of an insult. Tony was a guy I used to work with at a casino, and he said, it was his dream to write and record a blues album. And, he talked to me about it because he knew I was a guitar player. I said, I've actually got the equipment. I could record this. I will help you write music. I'll play guitar on it. And, earlier I was talking about the irreliability of musicians. I set up 3 different sessions with him, and he didn't show up for any of them. I was like, dude, it's your project. You need to be there. You need to show up for your project. Hard to believe, I understand. And of course he didn't. So I wrote this song called Just, because I was just sitting there with a guitar. I'm like, I got just a guitar, baby. And so I wrote a song called Just a Guitar. And so that is a slide guitar piece. Again, there are certainly places where I love, and I'm a big Gilmour fan. I mean, his capacity to do bends and vibrato is almost unparalleled. Like him and I will say Carlos Santana are two right on top. Their ability to just emote with a single note on the guitar is stunning. And I'm not quite feeling that here. It's a type of music that I will probably explore more of at some point. But I don't think it's quite what I'm going for in this case. Let me put this G chord in here. So I'm going to go a 3. So actually we'll have a unison on that because I'm also playing that on the open 3rd string. And then we will have an octave of that because I've got 3 G notes in here. And then there should be kazoo just all over this Megan place. And I think we'll go up a 5 from there for the, that's... It should be I hit the number 6 instead of 5. So let's see how this puts it in for, that's going to need to be rearranged. Okay, so I got... that's because I'm way off here. There we go. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. And I don't know what my strumming pattern is going to be here, so I'm just going to write the word strum up above this. And a lot of times that's the kind of thing I'll just kind of figure out, when I'm actually, I put notes like this in a lot of my stuff. I'll do strumming here. Like a lot of my pieces, if I've got some strummed guitar that I'm going to put in there, I'll just put in the chords, like, A minor, C major, and I'll just write strumming, and I'll figure it out when I go. There's a piece on my, I've been working on this album for like 6 or 7 months, Incomprehensible Isolation, my 65th album, that I'm still just working on some of the production crap on it, and it's been a little frustrating. I've reached out to, again, unreliable musicians. I've reached out to a couple engineers and said, hey, I'm looking for help on this particular thing, and I never hear back from them. And I'm like, hey, tell me what your rates are. I'm like, I'm trying to give you money. Could you respond? No. So yeah, I'm just struggling with a little bit of production stuff, but anyway, there's a song called A Fistful of Light, that might be my favorite one on the album. And there I've got some strumming in it, and it was very specific. I wrote in all the exact strings. I knew what I wanted to do in that case. In this case, I really don't know exactly where I want to go with this. So, but I think I'm going to want it to be a 2-measure thing. So then I'm going to want another chord here for 2 measures. So let's work out another. Actually, I think that might be it right there. Yeah, I think I'm actually kind of digging that. Hey, feel free to keep just talking smack in chat, Doc. That is okay. Yeah, okay. I think I know what I want to do here. Oh, let me get to where I need to be. Yeah, okay. A real simple little thing here. Yeah. Oh, oh, okay, yeah. I think that's what I'm looking for right there, and then that will hold for that measure. So I don't need that anymore. And block those out. I don't know why that didn't go all the way across. Huh. Funky. Anyway, I know what it means. So let's find another chord to... And I will probably pretty naturally do this anyway, but I think I want to put some specific strumming directions in here on this one. I've heard Bach's Air on the G string. I don't know if I've heard specifically by David Garrett, but Bach is, in my opinion, just one of the greatest geniuses of all time. His music is just so stunning. And, fun fact, Bach was not nearly as popular in his own time as he is now. And, he kind of got lost in obscurity after his death. I mean, he had some commercial success as a composer in his time, but really, I want to say it was either Haydn or Liszt was his contemporary. It was kind of like the rock star at the time, and he didn't have nearly as much luck getting his stuff out there, but his music is stunning, and when played by a world-class musician, which I'm kind of guessing. I'm not familiar with the name David Garrett, but I'm guessing this is kind of one of these people. It's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. Big fan of Bach's work, and Air on the G string is a wonderful piece of music. And really, I mean, I don't. No Bach pieces are coming to mind that I don't like, but the guy wrote like this stunning amount of music. So I'm sure there are some Bach pieces I have not heard. That I didn't know, Ted. That's really cool. That is really cool. Yeah, and Mendelssohn, another great composer. And so there's some wonderful work in that library. So there's just, there's so much stunning music out there. That's really cool. I had not heard that part before. I'm glad you brought that. I wasn't there again. Classical Ted is a music professor, so he knows this stuff. Let's find a chord. So we got our G minor there. So I've got the E flat. Then I go to the F. I think I should go down lower again. So that's the same C minor, F. No, sorry, C minor, G. Yeah, I'll check that link out later on. Yeah, I'm sure. There's also a really cool story about Shakespeare. There is a play called Vortigern and Rowena, I think is the name of it. And it's a forgery. This kid was basically a loser. And his father was this huge Shakespearean follower. This was, I want to say, a couple hundred years after Shakespeare's death. And so 1800s maybe. So this kid claimed that he had found a chest of Shakespeare's work and was feeding it a bit at a time, letters between Shakespeare and his wife and stuff like this. And he was feeding this stuff to his father. And it was all stuff that he was just writing. He was writing it up and passing it off as Shakespeare's. And he finally wrote this whole Shakespeare play that was a forgery. And claimed they had found this lost Shakespeare play, yada yada, and they actually went as far as performing it, and it was terrible. It was just a terrible play, and there were like fights in the theater over how bad the play was and stuff, and this guy's father actually went to his grave not believing that his son had forged his stuff, that it was actually legitimate Shakespeare. So I love stories like this. I love them. But in this case, they were actually, sitting on actual Bach material. But at that time, there was no way to know it. No way at all. Who knows who we're still going to be listening to in, 200 or 300 years from now. Maybe AC/DC will be something like someone will rediscover AC/DC in 300 years and be like, oh, this is this crazy band from ancient history. Who knows? I've always kind of had this when people say, where is music going? Are we going to keep listening to CDs? Are we going to download, stream? What's the future of music? Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know. Mozart definitely. He was basically just penniless when he died. And again, the library of music there, and Beethoven. I read a thing about Beethoven because he had gone deaf at the end of his life. I read, and you probably already know this, but I read that when they performed the Ninth for the first time, this massive packed house, and he's facing the orchestra, of course, because he's conducting, and so they get done, and the crowd is just losing their like Beatles style, losing their minds, and he has no idea because he's just looking at his people, his symphony there, and so one of the violinists came up and turned him around so he could see the applause, because he had no idea the reaction that he had gotten. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. So, yeah, yes, that's true. Turtles actually rule the world. We just don't know it yet. Okay, chords. That 1/4 movement, I think, it almost relates too well. But what if I went from... Not digging that. And then the story transpires. Okay. Oh, really? You see, this is why it's good to have a local TED. Because TED knows this stuff. I'm guessing all TEDs may not know this stuff. There may be TEDs who don't. But this particular TED clearly does. He clearly knows his classical stuff. And I'm sure he knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. You know, this is a funny thing. We were speaking earlier about music theory and, you know, kind of some of the problems with how, you know, what we identify as music theory. And I have long told people, you know, music theory at its core is nothing more than a description of what has been done with music in the past. It is not a prescription of what must be done in the future. It does not tell you how you must write your music. It tells you what has worked well already. And so when I played in a metal band for about 7 years. I played in a punk band for 2.5, 3 years. Hades Machine, great band. In fact, Jake of Hades Machine just put out a new single. Did a great job on. And if you talk to people in a music theory class, and you know they're going to talk about music history and music theory and musical concepts, but if you were to talk to a punk rock bass player, guitar player, drummer, whatever, singer, they'd say, "Oh no, I don't study that music theory crap. Right? I don't study music history. I don't need that stuff for punk." But I would argue that they absolutely do. They study punk theory. And, you know, you don't normally think of music theory around punk music, but if you study how the Ramones, you know, you learn a bunch of songs by the Ramones and the Sex Pistols and the Misfits, you are learning what punk players have done already. And you're like, okay, why does this work? And what do I want to do? So that is punk music theory. And if you ask those same people, you're like, hey, tell me about, you know, the lineup changes in Cancer Slug over the years. You're going to get an earful. You ask Jake that, my buddy Jake from Hades Machine, you're going to get an earful about what was going on with Cancer Slug, one of his favorite bands. And, you know, it's the same thing. You know, you ask these people about, you know, what do you think of the Misfits post Glenn Danzig? You're going to get an earful. And so that is music history. And anyone who claims that punk rock is not an important part of music history, I'm like, dude, you don't really know what music is. Punk had a huge impact. When you get the Clash, you know, yeah, this stuff is a big deal. Well, it's a big deal in certain circles, I should say. But yeah, absolutely, there is a music theory for punk. There is a music theory for metal. In classical music, we have this prohibition against parallel fifths. And it makes perfect sense because in 4-part writing, in contrapuntal writing, we tend to not want that sound. In heavy metal, parallel fifths pretty much a staple of what we do. So you're working with a different set of guidelines. I don't even like to use the word rules in conjunction with music theory, because they're really just guidelines. If these were rules, then I wouldn't have an A natural and a B natural, because I'm in G minor. But if it sounds good, it is good. And that's the biggest rule I know of in music, is if it sounds good, it is good. You can find a justification later. I can go through here and say, oh, and I kind of talked about, the sharp 4 with the B. Yeah, you can find a way to do that. I was catching up on this. Oh, that's funny. Ousted from directing because. yeah. No, I agree. I think it is a good perspective. And who's to say you couldn't get some great ideas about something you want to do in a classical song by listening to The Clash? Or who's to say that if you're writing a punk song, it's not a good idea to listen to Bob Marley and get some ideas from Bob? There's reggae theory. There's, all of these things have their own stylistic approaches. Open-mindedness, I absolutely agree. And it's I've always been bothered. Yeah, absolutely there are. Yes, I agree. It's always bothered me, like the open-mindedness thing that Doc brings up. When I see a bumper sticker that says, if it's not country, it's not music. If it's not rock, it's not music. No, that's just way off the mark. Way off the mark. Every genre I've ever heard, there is music I like. There is music I don't like. Every generation that's created music, which is, all of them, have created good music and bad music. So a lot of times you'll hear people, and now that I'm 50, I hear this all the time. It drives me crazy. Basically, my peers are quoting our parents on how bad the music these damn kids are listening to these days. And it's like, there's some great music being put out. And hey, you know what? We're the generation that made the band Poison famous. So we cannot say anything about bad music, because Poison is one of the worst bands in the history of sound vibrations. They are horrendous. And we thought they were just the bee's knees, baby. So we don't get to say anything about this. Sure. Yeah. You do. You absolutely. That's something I often encourage my students. Most of my students are in the rock and metal realm. That's I tend to teach mostly electric guitar, and I do teach classical. I've got some classical students, but particularly with my rock students, and a lot of times that's going to be teenage boys. But it's all age. I've had students as young as 5 and into their 80s. All kinds of different, concepts that they're after with that. But particularly with my metal guys, I'll be like, they'll get stuck. Like, yeah, I'm at this plateau. I don't know where to go. I'm like, why don't you learn a John Denver song? And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, you're gonna do things on guitar that you've never done before by learning a country song. And that's going to change the way your brain is thinking about where your fingers are going on a guitar. And you're very likely to start getting new ideas from that. It may not be that I'm not asking you to start being a country musician, but try something different than what you're accustomed to right now and see where that takes you. Because it could take you in some very cool places. And, some of them just won't do it, but a lot of them do have the open-mindedness. And typically, they're like, yeah, that was a really good idea. That really worked. So, yeah, I'm almost thinking that I may end up dropping this an octave into this voicing. That's definitely locked away as a possibility. And then Why is my brain betraying me right now? Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, absolutely. Cheers to that. I agree. What can I do with an A? So I'm going to have a diminished chord here. But I don't have to use my 5. But sometimes that diminished 5 could be really good. And a lot of that has to do with the voicing. It's like, where do you put the 5? Which octave do you put? I have not had pizza for like a day and a half. And so, yeah, that's a bit of a problem. I'm actually making a pizza steel. I often cook my pizza on a stone. Cool, see you in a bit, Ted. So I've got a really nice pizza stone, but I'm making I just got this big 15-inch, quarter-inch thick steel, just for cooking pizza. So I got to do a little more finishing on it and then season it. But so that's gonna happen soon. Got to water the plants. Well, if you're gonna water the plants, you do it really quick. Not just kind of quick, you do it really quick. Because you force feed those plants. And I'm going to work on an A chord. Okay. Yeah, that's where I'm going. That is where I'm going with this. I'm changing that. Okay. Changing the voicing of this G chord. So I'm going to go to a first inversion G minor. Yeah. That's what I'm doing. Okay. So I'm going to go to the B flat and then the D note. Oh. For the 3, and then I'll have another root up there, and then another. So this is just a dyad, really. Did I get that right? I feel like I don't have that. Oh, that's because that should be a D note. There we go. Let's make sure that's looking. Yes, that's what I want right there. Oops. Pardon me. The hiccups. Oh, and wrong screen there. That is what I want. Full show. Okay. And then here, I'm going to take these and I'm going to take my bottommost, and this is my topmost notes, oops, up there, and then my bottommost notes, oh, also up one. And so that will end up being here. That is where I want. And then, this is such a great thing when you're working on your music and you're like, oh, this chord's cool, that's kind of blah, blah, blah. And then you finally hear like, oh, no, that's what I want. That's where I want it to go. So this, and then I think I'm going to have this be a repeating thing. So this is going to be, let's see how this sounds. Get on the correct, pick them up here. Yeah, okay. That's going to work. That is going to work pretty well, I do believe. So, yeah. And I will iterate that I do save this like a couple of times every minute. That's something I have always just worked that into my process. Save constantly. It's so important. I have lost too much work by being not diligent enough about my saving process. So I think in the last 3 years, I've never lost more than a minute of music due to a power outage, a shutdown, a blue screen, or whatever. Program shuts down, all of those things. A couple weeks ago, I was playing the song Empty World, and I'm like 12 minutes deep, and all of a sudden my recording program that plays everything just shut off right in the middle of the show. I'm like, everyone's like, hey, you lost your audio. I'm like, oh, I lost everything, baby. So that was exciting. And nothing I can do about that, but I didn't lose any information. That's the important part. Everything is saved when that happens. So this is a fun little, this is gonna work well. Like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing where this album goes, and you guys may or may not ever know about it. Let's see, these are just going to, just a very basic, very light little bit of cymbals in this, at least for now, kind of just on the offbeat on the 3 of each measure. And probably at some point in the song that will increase to change the level of intensity. But yeah, no, this I'm liking. So this basically gives me a G minor and kind of a, so what would we have here? We have an A minor with a 4 and a 7. Also, so it would be kind of an A minor 7 at 11 with the 5 omitted. Oh, no, I've got the diminished 5 in there. So I've got kind of an A diminished 7 at 11. Okay, yeah. Right, okay. I suppose you could kind of reinterpret this as a C minor. And so, yeah, it would count. Well, yeah, and that's another thing too. You can always reinterpret a chord different ways. So I was thinking of the A minor, but with the absence of the actual A, because I would be in first inversion, it might make more sense to think of this as a C so it'd be like a C minor A C minor. Yes, this is like a C minor add 9, which I love 9 chords. And because this is the G, I do have the G, so I'm kind of going from a G, which is funny because earlier I didn't like the whole G to C movement, but now that I have revoiced things, totally working for me. And this song, I don't know yet if I'm going to play pick style or finger style. So far, everything in here that I've decided to do finger style, I am going to do on an electric guitar. This song, I have all of the titles laid out for the album, but only a few of them have I been like, oh, this needs to be that title. I started with, the first song is going to be called It's a Long Story, because my plan for this is to be kind of a concept album. Basically, it's the whole did you live your life well enough thing. Because so many people, I think, do get to the end of their lives and they're like, where in the hell did all the time go? And there are poems and quotes and movies about this whole concept already, but it's such a pervasive part of our lives, and it is a long story. So I'm kind of starting with It's a Long Story, and then the very last song is going to be The Thief of Time. And the way I've envisioned the concept is that I am the thief of time for me. You are the thief of time for you. I think it'll be fun, and I don't know exactly where it's all going to go. Let me pull up the list of titles that I've got for this, and right now I'm writing 10 songs for it. I think I've got like 14 potential titles for this album. So of course, unless I write more songs, they won't all get used. And I don't even know what position. I'm working on album 65 right now. I don't know where this would fall or any of that. Where is Thief of Time? Let me just do a search for it here. Here we go. So the album, the potential song titles I've got: It's a Long Story, Thought Is All I Am, Erasure of Time, I've used that one. Walking Countless Miles, I've used that one. Malefic Influences, Shadows of Nothing, Unable to Speak, Madness and Reason, Shards of Glass, Doomed to Remain, Burn the Bridges Behind Us. I'm pretty sure I'm going to use that one. I really like that song title. We Shouldn't Be Here, and of course, I've already used The Thief of Time. So, I got some good song titles there, and I think, once I start putting the lyrical content, once I start writing the poems, I'll probably narrow that down pretty easily. And that's something I need to start getting back. I used to write a lot of poetry that was very inappropriate for anything I would put in a song. And Doc and I have talked. Thank you for the compliment there. Doc and I have talked a bit because he is a moderator, and we've talked about what is a Randy show about. And one of the things we talked about is, I've got students who watch this stuff, and my students are sometimes 7, 8 years old, 12 years old, and it's like, it's not I want it to be appropriate, but there's also a thing where even if I was going for a strictly adult audience, you would not hear me putting cuss words into my songs. And it's not because I'm afraid of being offensive. I don't mind offending people. I'm a very big fan of the statement that offense is not given, offense is taken. And so if you find a person and they're saying, oh, I'm offended by what you did, well, that's kind of their own fault. In many cases, there can be exceptions to that. But my thing about the cussing in music is I'm just bored by it. And, when I hear bands like Insane Clown Posse, and it's like, okay, you know what? Could you tell a story? I would much rather listen to Bob Dylan. Well, see that poem. See, I love writing poems like that, but that poem's never been published. That's the difference. It's been distributed privately. It has not been distributed publicly, nor will it be. That one is not one you can just find on the internet. I should back that up. It was accidentally distributed publicly once when we left a physical copy at a restaurant. That was my fault. We never went back to that restaurant because they would have poisoned us. But yeah, I just when I listen to Insane Clown Posse, and it's like, I would so much rather listen to Bob Dylan with his gravelly voice and his crappy guitar playing, because he's telling stories, and Dylan is such a brilliant crafter of lyrics. Like many people, I became a fan of Dylan through Hendrix. Hendrix has covered quite a few. I'd have to look up how many. He's even covered a few of Dylan's tunes. And so like the first time I heard All Along the Watchtower was the Hendrix version, which is killer. And just that first line, there must be some kind of way out of here, said the Joker to the thief. I'm like, that line is awesome. And I'm like, that's what I want to hear. I want to hear something that makes me say, oh man, that is a cool line. And anyone can catch attention by cussing. I feel the same way about comedians. I love comedians, and I'm a big fan of comedians like Carlin and Pryor and Murphy and Kinison. And they cuss their brains out. I love that crude humor, but I also find it very admirable when you have someone like Lucille Ball, who never cussed in her comedic endeavors. I think if she were alive today, she'd be cussing her brains out. She couldn't at the time, and she made it work. Victor Borgia is one of my absolute favorite comedians. Totally clean, musical comedian, brilliant, get you gut laughing, and doesn't need to do that. And so I think that's admirable. When there were the PMRC hearings in the, I want to say late 80s, maybe mid 80s, which this was Frank Zappa, Dee Snider of Twisted Sister, and John Denver all testified in front of Congress against, Cosby had some other stuff going on. That is true. His comedy was very clean. But the PMRC hearings were the hearings where these three musicians testified about whether or not there should be ratings for music. And I love the testimony of all three of these guys. They're all very smart individuals. But John Denver's was so poignant, and he delivered it. So, and John Denver was a wonderful performer, and his delivery as a musician and just as a speaker was spot on. But he went in and he talked about his song, Rocky Mountain High, which is a fantastic song. And I've been a John Denver fan since I was a kid. Some of the first stuff I learned on guitar was to strum some of his basic songs. And so he's talking about this song, and I didn't know this until I heard the testimony given to these, which I listened to years after it actually happened. And he said that song was banned by something like 1,500 radio stations in the U.S. because they thought the song was about drugs. And he said, when you say the word high, there are various connotations, possible meanings to that word. It could be high as in high on drugs. It could refer to being stoned. It could be high as in altitude, physically high off the ground. And it can be high as in elation. And he said, there is no possibility that those people who banned this have ever stood atop the Rocky Mountain range at midnight and looked at the stars and the moon. Because if they had, they would understand what that song was about, and it's nothing to do with drugs. And he pointed out that if you cannot trust radio stations to properly interpret the meaning of a song, there is no way you can trust a committee made up of politicians who have no musical education to make that call. But there again, when you listen to John Denver, when you listen to that song, Rocky Mountain High, you are transported to somewhere else. If I could come up with lyrics even in the neighborhood, in the same freaking county as Dylan or John Denver, that would be so satisfying to me. If I could have someone listen to a song that I write and be moved the way people have been moved by the music of John Denver or Bob Dylan or Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper's a brilliant storyteller. That's like the kind of goal that I would have as a lyric writer. And if you need to cuss to do that, in my opinion, you've already lost. So that's my thoughts on how that works. Yeah, they did, absolutely. Light My Fire is not about drugs. It's about internal feelings. That is a very innocuous song that was made out to be, it's going to be destructive to the minds of the youth. No, it isn't. There's another great one, Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, a Seattle band. Really their biggest hit, but they had a lot of great music. And so when that song came out, I love this story. I love this. The FBI spent, I think it was about 2 years, investigating the meaning of the song. And they, because when you listen to it, you can't understand what the guy is saying, right? I mean, the lyrics are just this mush of words. And so the FBI investigated this for like 2 years, and they spoke to the record company. They spoke to fans. They spoke to the engineers, the producers, the studio hands. They spoke to the guitar player, the drummer, the bass player. They spoke to everyone except the singer. They would not talk to the singer about that song because they were sure that he was on drugs and would lie to them. So the one guy who knew what the words actually were, they would not talk to. And the lyrics are widely available now. It's about going on vacation to, the Mediterranean area with a girl named Louie. It's about going on vacation. It's as innocuous as it's possible to be in the meaning of anything. It's like this. We are not destroying kids, and even if you listen to the Misfits, right? The Misfits is not where I'm going to send people for great stories like Dylan and Hendrix and Cooper, John Denver, REM. I'm not going to send people to the Misfits for that. You send people to the Misfits for very different stuff. But you know what? The Misfits, with all their cussing and all that, they're still a great band with the very basic music. Love it. And no one got hurt. They're not hurting anyone with their music. If words can hurt you, you're way too weak. And you need to figure out how to interpret words a lot better. And you can quote me on that. Because I'm passionate about this. Yes. So, this stuff, but I would much rather be able to do this with just storytelling. Drink to that, baby. So I didn't write nearly as much music tonight as I did just screwing around and talking about stuff. But this has been some pretty fun conversationalizationing. That should be a thing. So, and I am getting a bit hungry, so I think I'm going to shut down before long here. I think you should do an homage to RD with titles that fall into the category like Despair Squid. Oh. Dude, one thing I'm thinking of doing is, again, this will require me to get my singing up to snuff, and time will tell. I'm making no promises on this, though I do feel good about it, and I am practicing on a daily basis, because apparently practice works. You couldn't verify that through the majority of the students I've had over the years, but it does work. And so one thing I want to do is a series of tribute albums, and I hadn't considered doing this yet, but this could work. So I've thought there are musicians and bands that have been just massively influential. I mean, like Blind Guardian, is, I think, one of the most musically significant heavy metal bands since Iron Maiden is Blind Guardian. They're not nearly as well known as they should be. But I was thinking, and a lot of times when you do a tribute, you're just doing cover songs. But I was like, wouldn't it be cool to do a tribute album where I'm not even going to try to write in their style. I'm just going to write an album, but the lyrical content will contain the title of every single one of their songs. I think that would be a really cool way to do a tribute. It's like, no, I'm not writing music like yours. I'm just writing music, and I'm using your album titles in my lyrics. And I could totally do that with all of the titles of the episodic titles from Red Dwarf. That would be a fun thing to do. I'm gonna. That's. I have taken note. And again, I don't even know how many of these projects I'll ever get to. It may be a bunch of them. It may be none of them. I don't know. But one thing I've said often is there's no such thing as inspiration. My first blues album is going to be called "Standing at the Airport Waiting on a Train," and that statement is based on the idea that too many people waste their time waiting for inspiration to hit. And inspiration isn't going to hit. So you got to go do stuff. That's what inspiration is waiting. Inspiration's waiting for you. You shouldn't be waiting for inspiration. Waiting for inspiration is like standing at the airport waiting on a train. And that one, I've written the lyrics for the song. That one will be a lyrical song. I have recorded and performed instrumental versions of it. I really like the song. So that's one I'd really like to sing. But, the thing is, being inspired to do something is useless. Intentions are one of the most useless things that we have as people. Because if you're not doing something, it doesn't matter what you intend to do. If you intend to eat a pizza, but you're still hungry 3 hours later because you didn't eat the pizza, that's your own fault. Don't just be inspired to eat pizza. Eat the pizza. Or write the song. So, and that's, God, I know so many people who want to learn a language, write a book, write a script, be in a play, write a song, learn an instrument, learn to paint, to draw, to whatever. And it's like, do it. Just make and do it. Zarquan's knees. Go do it. So, anyway, the blues album, definitely fun. Stravinsky nailed it. Absolutely. That is so true. It is the result. When like we were talking earlier, Ted, we said, when we're composing and not streaming, it's a very different process. And that's when we're sitting there and you're going to town on it. There's another statement I love. This is by Alan Alda, who played in, I think, Hawkeye in MASH. Wonderful show. He's really big into the sciences, and he was doing this talk with Lawrence Krauss, and this statement is wonderful. He said, "Science requires imagination. Art requires rigor." Most people would think, end quote. Most people would think that it's the opposite. You got to have all this imagination to do your drawings and your paintings and your writings and your compositionings. But when you're sitting there composing, you got to just sit down and go to town. You got to buckle in and go. That's rigor. You got to write the next note. That's what you got to do. In science, they got to be thinking of all this different stuff. Well, what could this mean? But in music, in art, you got to sit down and you got to go to town. I have not been rigorous in writing tonight because I've been chatting with you guys, which is great, which has been an excellent use of my time. But I wrote like 4 measures and then I copied it to make it 8. With rigor, I write a lot more than that. So, yeah, again, these are just subjects upon which I'm very, very passionate. So, it looks like I've been streaming for almost 2.5 hours here. I am getting a bit on the hungry side, so I think I'm going to do a thin crust pizza tonight. and I'm gonna do an olive oil and spices sauce because I'm out of tomato sauce, and I live in a small town in Eastern Washington, and after 7 o'clock, you don't get to buy anything. If I wanted to go buy tomato paste, I'd have to drive for like 45 minutes one way. That ain't gonna happen. So yeah, I think I'm gonna shut this down. I have had a great time. Everyone, thanks so much for coming in. I will be playing a live show tomorrow night. I'm not sure which album I'm going to do, but I will definitely be playing live, and it should be a good time. So again, thank you one, thank you all. I will hopefully see you tomorrow night. Hey, grapes and cheese works, baby. Hey, it's not a pizza, but as long as you like it, get down with your bad self. Thanks so much, everyone. I will